agent madness. Sam Darnold to the Seahawks, Devontae Adams to the Rams, Justin Field to the Jets. An update on LeBron James's groin injury. Dave Roberts becomes the highest paid manager in the sport. All that more coming up next on The Big Lead. What is up, and welcome to The Big Lead. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. And we've got a jam-packed show. NFL free agency madness is upon us. And here to talk about it is Seahawks reporter, Mr. Corbin K. Smith. Corbin, lots happening in the world of the Seahawks. John Schneider has you all around town talking all things Seahawks. But we got to start with the reaction that you signed Sam Darnold to essentially replace Geno Smith. You're going with a younger guy, a Sam Darnold who had a resurgent season with the Vikings, and he's now a Seattle Seahawk. What can you tell us about how the deal went down, and just what's your reaction to him becoming the new quarterback in Seattle?
It's been a whirlwind, Doug, when you consider that Geno Smith was negotiating an extension only a week ago. And it looked like everything was heading towards Geno Smith being locked up for the next 2 or 3 years, and then negotiations just broke down. He wanted a certain amount of money. The Seahawks were not going to approach that number. And so John Schneider, rather than holding out for a couple of days with free agency coming up, decided, you know what? Pete Carroll wants you back in Vegas. He was the coach that gave you a chance here. We're going to ship you for a third-round pick. And that decision was not made without having a contingency plan. And the contingency plan was Sam Darnold and their intel that he was maybe going to be more affordable than they originally thought. And you look at the deal that they were able to sign him at, he's now the 18th highest paid quarterback, and it's more than $10 million less than what Geno Smith was asking for per season. So that is really what it boiled down to. From a cost standpoint, they felt like they were going to get more bang for their buck here. They moved on from Geno Smith, sent him to a place that he's going to be really happy reuniting with Pete Carroll. And then you get a quarterback that has been in a very similar system with Kevin O'Connell to what Clint Kubiak's going to be running in Seattle.
And what can you tell us about like how close they were to getting a new deal done with Geno Smith? The numbers that he put up last season with a team that, I mean, the running game at times wasn't there, but the completion percentage, I mean, the numbers that he put up, he was a above average quarterback and someone that has had success in Seattle. How close were they to getting a new deal done? We're at the 25-yard line. Were they close to the goal line? Just how close was that? And do you think that the Seahawks can still be in a good position to win football games next season with Sam Darnold under center?
Well, going with your first question here, I'm going to reference the Seahawks-Rams game at Lumen Field. This is how close I think they were. At least the Seahawks thought that they were. They were in the red zone, and then Geno Smith got picked for a pick six. And the pick six in this case was not giving back a counter offer. Basically, they cut off negotiations. And that meant Geno Smith was basically telling them, I don't appreciate the offer there. I want to go play in Las Vegas. And so they were able to make it happen. So it was just kind of one of those cases where it felt like they were deep in negotiations, but it just ultimately didn't get into the end zone. As for whether this team can stay afloat and winning games, compete in the NFC West with Sam Darnold, I think they absolutely can, but you don't have DK Metcalf. You don't have Tyler Lockett. This is a team that has basically completely burned down to the studs, aside from Jack Smith and Jigba, their offense. And so they are going to have an offensive line that can actually open up the run game. They have to have a complementary game. They did not have that for Geno Smith last year. If they can shore up the O-line, they need to be aggressive in this free agency period. Get some people to protect Sam Darnold. Allow the run game to get going so you can play action, which is his biggest strength. He had 16 touchdowns on play action passes last year. Kubiak's offense is built around that schematically. So if they can run the ball and the offensive line is better, they absolutely can put together a playoff caliber team with Sam Darnold, but they've got a lot of work to do with all of the defections that they've had here the last week.
Yeah, because it feels like the optimistic view of this is saying, hey, the Seahawks get Sam Darnold for less than the Buccaneers paid for Baker Mayfield, for less than the Saints paid for Derek Carr. Heck, even if you look at what the Giants paid for Daniel Jones a couple of seasons ago, this is a Sam Darnold that, yes, it was one season, but if he looks anything like he did for most of last year, I mean, this could be a win for a franchise that clearly is going in a different direction without DK Metcalf. Now, you did really hint that this DK move was happening. What can you tell us about how that move went down and the Seahawks' decision to move on from Metcalf?
Yeah, a week before the combine is when they started their initial negotiations because Metcalf only had 1 year left in his deal, and the two sides were pretty far apart in terms of compensation. DK Metcalf wanted $30+ million per year as one of the highest paid receivers. And while the Seahawks valued Metcalf as a top 10 receiver, they didn't view him as a top 5 receiver. And the stats bear that out. He's a very good football player, but not in that Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown type category. We're talking about the best receiver in the league. But he wanted to be paid accordingly. And then John Schneider was not actively trying to shop DK Metcalf, but he fielded a few calls at the combine because that's what he says he always does. You've got to have your ears open to see what's out there. So he was at least discussing DK Metcalf's availability with the Packers, the Patriots, and there was a third team that my source was not connected with. But those negotiations and the talks that were on the phone, not a surprise, less than a week later, DK Metcalf saying, oh, you guys have been talking about moving me. All right, well, I want to be moved, and put in the trade request, and John Schneider didn't mess around. He granted that, and they got the second-round pick from the Steelers. So that's how all this happened in a pretty quick order, and it just felt like that relationship was fractured to the point they weren't going to be able to fix it.
Yeah, and you look at kind of the deals they made. Does this signal a rebuild for the Seahawks? I mean, what are you calling this transition with this just changeover in talent?
I don't think it's a rebuild. I think that they're trying to reload because, look, the defense was a top 5 scoring defense the last 8 games last season. And after re-signing Ernest Jones and Jaron Reed yesterday, they're pretty much going to have every starter from that unit back under contract. So they think the defense can carry this football team. Now they're just hoping that an offense that didn't live up to standards last year and underachieved, they're hoping that with changing some of these pieces, a new offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak, a better offensive line, that the offense can be better. And they don't need it to be a top 10 scoring offense. If they're in the top 15 and they don't hurt themselves in the red zone as much with this defense that they've assembled, Mike McDonald believes that there's nowhere to go but up with that group. Then they still can be very competitive in the NFC West. But the offensive line is really the big X factor. If they don't get that cleaned up, it's going to be really difficult to build off the 10-win season they had last year.
Yeah, and I'm curious to say what you have to say about what this means for Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now he is in that number 1 receiver spot. He's going to get most of the targets. You saw the growth that he had last season, making the Pro Bowl. What does this mean for JSN?
He's just going to be fed the football more. And you look at Clint Kubiak's track record. Back when he was the offensive coordinator in Minnesota, Justin Jefferson went for over 1,600 yards that year. Last year, he could have had 2,000-yard receivers if Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed did not get hurt middle of the season. He knows how to get the football scheme to his receivers in space. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, let's be honest, he was the number 1 receiver for most of last season for the Seahawks. It wasn't DK Metcalf, which I've been told may have been part of the reason that Metcalf kind of forced his way out of town. Wanted to be the number 1 guy. JSN already was. Now he clearly is going to be the alpha dog, and they're going to have to figure out how they can supplement him with second and third receivers on the roster.
And last question here, let's grade the trade. First, the Geno Smith trade, because you look at it, I mean, it clears $31 million salary for 2025. You only take on a $13.5 million dead cap hit. Then you look at the Darnold deal, where you get with that. Just kind of what do you grade these two moves for the Seahawks?
The Geno Smith's trade, I'm going to give it a C just because I value Geno Smith's play more than a lot of people do. And I think he has been a victim of circumstance the last couple of years. That O-line and not having a run game, and yet he's still put together a bunch of game-winning drives, was as clutch as any quarterback in the NFL with those surroundings. And so I felt like extending him was the right move. And getting just pick 92 back for him felt a little bit low to me. As far as the Sam Darnold signing, I'm going to give that a B because I do think the value is there. If they would have gone $40 million a year, I probably would have said C or C minus because you have 1 year of work, of quality quarterback play to work off of. But I think that the price point, the fact that it really looks like it's a 2-year, $55 million deal that they can then move on from. And if you want to move on after this next year, it's a smaller cap hit. They have given themselves easy outs if this doesn't work out.
Well, there he goes, Corbin K. Smith. He's all things Seahawks. Go follow him on the X. Go also listen to Yost Locked On Seahawks 2, the 12th man. He is their man, Corbin K. Smith. We appreciate it. Hey, this is probably going to be not the last movie we're going to be talking about because the Seahawks are very, very active, making headlines early on. We'll see if it works out. I do think that you are 100% right. I almost feel like Geno Smith has managed to become underrated. I mean, top completion percentage since 2022. But Sam Darnold, very interesting. And I like the fact that it's not a rebuild. It's more of a reload. But thank you, Corbin. We know how valuable your time is, especially on a day like today. But thanks for joining us here on The Big Lead, my man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Doug.
There he goes, Corbin K. Smith. And for some reason, the intro song just played right now. But it is all good. But yeah, guys, definitely give him a follow and definitely give your takes down below. What are your thoughts on what Corbin K. Smith had to say about the Seahawks and the moves they made this offseason? Because, I mean, I think for me so far, it's interesting to hear him say that it's a reload because that's exactly what it is. They're not saying, okay, since Geno Smith is a Raider now, we're playing for a draft pick. We're playing for the future. They want to win now because of how low that defense is. Leonard Williams had a fantastic season. You still have weapons like Kenneth Walker III and Jackson Smith and Jigba. There are pieces there. I will say from the Raiders end, I love this move for Geno Smith. Geno Smith has become one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL, and they send over a third-round pick to Seattle, and that was one of their third-round picks they had stashed away because remember, the Raiders got a third-round pick from the Jets in the Devontae Adams deal, so they had some draft capital to play with. And the thing about Smith is he definitely is a quarterback that thrives in a structured system. And you're reunited with Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll understands what his skill set is. And with Geno Smith, it's about getting the ball out to your weapons and completing passes. I mean, he has 70.4% completion percentage last season. That was a career high. Did have 15 interceptions, but I think what this signals from the Raiders' standpoint is they're just not a lot of good quarterbacks in this draft. And outside of Cam Ward, I don't think there are franchise quarterbacks in this draft that you would want to give high draft capital for. I mean, just ask any draft guru, watch any draft analysis. Most of these picks for the top quarterbacks would be in either late first or second or third round in previous drafts or in the 2026 draft. So this is another example of a team that would rather go with an established veteran, someone that has had success in this league. And if I'm the Raiders, I don't draft a quarterback, I draft another weapon. I think, you could go running back, go Ashton Genty. I mean, there's weapons they could go with that could improve this offense. And I think if you are on the Seattle Seahawks end of this too, I think you feel good about the fact that you get a quarterback at a number that you feel more comfortable with. You look at the deal, 3 years, $100.5 million. Yeah, but only $55 million is guaranteed. So the worst case scenario on the Seahawks end of this is a 1 year, $55 million deal. And there's really not a bad example of someone that doesn't matter how much he's paid. If he's your QB1 at that price for 1 year, you'll live with that. And if the upside is there, then that is fine. So I think it's a smart move by the Seahawks, especially if you're going with a younger, cheaper quarterback and you get a third round pick. So hey, sign me up for that if I'm a Seahawks fan. I think the Seahawks win in this, but just because I just don't think Geno Smith leads that roster right now deep, and I think the Raiders are a team that needed a change, and now they have someone who's not Aaron Rodgers. I like the non-Aaron Rodgers-ness of this from the Raiders standpoint, but let's bring in J-Rob. First, J-Rob, what's your reaction to the Seahawks getting your guy, your Pro Bowl BFF, Sam Darnold, up in Seattle, gets back to the West Coast?
I mean, I love it for Seattle. I think if Sam is able to replicate what he did a year ago and show more in the playoffs, this is your quarterback for a decade. and this gives you some stability. I also feel like the difference between him and Geno Smith was a bit of that mobility. Geno Smith can move, but at 34 years old, do you really want him moving too much in the pocket? You know, you want him to be more of a pocket passer. I think with Sam Darnold, you could utilize his mobility and his youth a bit more. For both organizations, I thought this was a fairly good situation. I think Geno, you put yourself in a situation with Pete Carroll and really giving the Raiders some stability, at least until they find their next iteration at the position. And I think for the Seahawks, this kind of shows we're going into this next wave. I think this was, like you said, a reload. It wasn't really a rebuild. It was like, we're going to still have another competent quarterback. I know DK Metcalf is gone, but I mean, listen, I think JSN can have a top 10 level receiver type of year. I think he's that good. Maybe I'm Ohio State homer as well, but I think he's that talented. So for everybody involved, I really will say this is one of those situations where I do feel like everybody won.
Yeah, I think both sides, you can look at the positives, and it really comes down to how they perform next season. I mean, there are question marks about both quarterbacks. With Darnold, if you could guarantee the production that he had last year, 4,319 yards, 36 touchdowns, and also the durability, he's played in all 18 games. If you could guarantee that, then he would be easily a quarterback that would be a top 10 to 15 highest paid quarterback. But he's getting a lot more than backup money. He's getting a lot more than a lot of quarterbacks are getting in this league. And I think he's earned that. And I think it's a good situation for him too. Back on the West Coast with a team that I think most people wouldn't be shocked if they weren't a playoff team, but also they have that playoff upside because of an offensive line that has the potential to be one of the best in the league, because of a defense that was thriving for most of last season. Geno Smith, like I said, for some reason, just those Jets years kind of, I think, have stuck into people's minds just because he was so dysfunctional there. And then look, that's what do both these guys have in common, right? Both guys that were with the Jets. I mean, Sam Darnold, third overall in 2018 with the Jets, didn't quite work out. Geno Smith's time there didn't quite work out, but now they both are on to greener pastures. Now, switching gears to the Jets, got to talk about Justin Fields. Adam Schefter reported this morning that the Jets and Justin Fields agreed to a 2-year deal. It's reportedly worth $40 million with $30 million guaranteed. Now, Justin Fields has just not found a home in the NFL. The potential has certainly been there. The talent has been eye-popping at times, but the former number 11 pick in the 2021 draft just hasn't found that place where it looks like he's going to spend the majority of his career. Now, same thing goes to him as it goes for Darnold and Geno Smith. Bad situation in Chicago. But with the Steelers last season, I don't agree with Tomlin's choice to go to Russell Wilson. And yes, they did have success. They did go on a run, but I think that the potential that he flashed, the direction that his career was going in, I would have stuck it out with him just because I think that the upside and the ceiling for that team was just higher. I mean, you look at the numbers that he put up, had a 65.8 quarterback completion percentage. That was the best of his career. In Chicago, they would say, oh, he's a 50% completion percentage guy. He can't get the ball out. He can't go those first and second reads. That wasn't the case with the Steelers. Completes a 65.8% clip, and then a 93.3% quarterback rating. That was the best in his career. Threw for 1,106 passing yards, had 5 touchdowns and 1 interception, 289 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns, but that was in a small sample size. I think that if you're going to use his career record, which is 14-30, his numbers, 7,780 yards, 45 touchdowns, 31 interceptions, a 61.1% completion percentage, and say, oh, Justin Fields a bust, that doesn't tell the full story. Just look at Sam Darnold. Can Justin Fields be a late bloomer? Can Justin Fields be one of those quarterbacks that gets into a better situation, a better environment for himself, and has success? And I look at Jets offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand. I mean, they had so much success with the Lions, and one of the reasons why was because they tailored that offense around Jared Goff's skill sets. The great quarterbacks in this league have the ability to link up with top-level offensive coordinators who understand their strengths and their weaknesses. And the great coordinators in this league aren't just one-trick ponies, right? They tailor their schemes, their play calling to what the strengths and weaknesses of their quarterback. And I think that with the Jets, you're going to see an offense that's built around Justin Fields. He hasn't had that luxury in his 2 stops in Chicago and with the Steelers. And I think you're going to see a lot of RPOs. You're going to see play action. You're going to see more creativity that will highlight his athleticism. Last season with the Jets, Aaron Rodgers, the numbers were average to above average, but Jets fans will tell you, Jets reporters will tell you that he was not willing to push the ball down the field and get it to Garrett Wilson and try to take more risks. Justin Fields, one thing I loved about him watching his whole career, he'll throw an interception, he'll take a risk, and that's because he's willing to go that route. So he's 26. He's 26, and I'm not guaranteeing that he's going to be this Pro Bowler, their future franchise quarterback, but compared to some of their other options, the Jets were linked to Carson Wentz and Marcus Mariota, Kirk Cousins. No seasoning there, right? I mean, we got a little spice with Justin Fields, and I like the upside potential with him. And Garrett Wilson, you keep your best player happy, him and Sauce Gardner, right? I mean, Garrett Wilson played with Fields at Ohio State, lots of success together. He was darn right depressed playing with Aaron Rodgers. So you get him back with someone that he's played with. So I like this move for the Jets. I give this a B. I give this a B, but I really like this. I think this is a really, really nice move based on their options.
Yeah, Doug, I love this move. I mean, you know, I'm a Jets fan for life, die hard. Justin Fields was my number 2 quarterback coming out of 2021. I thought he was better than Zach Wilson. Ironically enough, I think if the Jets would have drafted him, he might not still be on the team due to the dysfunction, which was that front office, that coaching staff at the time. I love this move because particularly with the coaching staff that he's going to get in New York, I mean, I think Justin Fields showed in that 4-2 record he had as the starter for the Steelers, he can play within structure. But what makes him dangerous is if you need him to be a playmaker and play out of structure, he can do that very well. And I think for a Jets team whose offensive line wasn't great last year, you have Breece Hall and Braylon Allen in an RPO, read option type of scheme with the Justin Fields. It's a lot of ways they can gash a defense. And then you add Garrett Wilson on the perimeter. Don't forget, Jeremy Ruckert is on this football team too, his tight end at Ohio State. So there's some chemistry in New York for Justin to build upon. Chris Olave commented on this acquisition by the Jets. So this could potentially be a reason why the Jets might want to trade down the draft, trade some compensation, really put together the New York City Buckeyes and try to go for it. I'm all in for it. But, you know, real quick, Justin Fields has been a quarterback that I really do feel like has not gotten the best really benefit of the doubt by not only media, but the front offices that were put in place to develop him. The Bears were diabolical, and it took Caleb Williams coming to the team to show like, okay, Eberflus is not great at this. Even though Justin Fields could have took that team to a playoffs if he doesn't get hurt this season prior. The start with the Steelers, I think, said it all. And so for Justin Fields, this is really 2 years to change your life as a quarterback. You can be a 10-year franchise level QB for the Jets, or, you know, you can be a journeyman. But I do feel like the Jets putting $30 million guaranteed into him over a 2-year stretch, this could be, I mean, I know comeback player of the year doesn't have the qualifications for it, but this could be a comeback player of the year type of season for Justin Fields if all things go well in New York.
For sure. That's definitely, I mean, I love the Buckeye reunion element of all this. And look, at the end of the day, if you look at how quarterbacks are being compensated in the National Football League in 2025, they're paying him $20 million this season. So it's not starters money. It's more than backup money, but he's young. He's young. I mean, he's young, and they're a team that, look, if Jador Sanders is there at 7, I mean, you could trade out if another team wants him. You can get more picks. You can get more value unless you think that you can find that quarterback and he's your bridge guy. So I do think this is a smart, sensible move for the Jets. I like the fact they're taking a risk. he still has a lot to prove. Let's just be honest. He still has to prove that he can be that quarterback that he was built to be coming out of Ohio State. But I think there is a world where he's kind of on the lower end of starting quarterbacks, or I think there's a world where everything clicks. And I think if you're a Jets fan, you're hoping for the latter. Now, switching gears, Davante Adams. So the Rams get their premier elite wide receiver that they have been looking for the last couple of seasons. And there's been no secret in Rams land that the Rams have wanted a top level, top 10 type of receiver that can separate, that can be a red zone threat, that can allow Matthew Stafford to use that elite arm strength. And this is a deal for the Rams where essentially you could have kept Cooper Kupp for $20 million, or you get Davante Adams and Tutu Atwell for $36 million combined. And Adams is superior to Cooper Kupp at this stage of his career. And the truth is, with Adams, yes, he is on the wrong side of 30, but he's had 1,000 yards in each of his last 5 seasons. He was just 3 yards shy of 1,000-yard season in 2019. He would have had 7 straight 1,000-yard seasons. And then on top of that, there's the durability. 2019 was the last year in which he didn't play at least 14 games. And he was still able to play 12 that season. So throughout Davante Adams' prime, throughout the last couple of seasons, he's done what Cooper Kupp hasn't been able to do. That's stay on the field and be productive. He's still 14th in separation. He's still a 75.8 overall PFF grade, and that's playing with a bad Raiders team and a bad Jets team for organizations that just did not have the stability and offensive coordinators and quarterbacks that you need to truly optimize your skills. And I think Davante Adams, he's happy to be back on the West Coast, wants to make a run at a Super Bowl with this Rams team. And it's the same thing with some of these other guys as far as just not being these long-term investments that you're tied to. If he stays in 2026, it'd be a $30 million cap hit, which is possible. It's reasonable. If they like him, you keep him. But it's a $12 million dead cap hit, and you would save $18 million. So this is another move that could turn out just to be a one-year deal, and you're not hamstrung in future deals. So I love this move for the Rams. I think you look at some of the other moves, Godwin back with the Bucks, just not a lot of top-end talented receivers that you could have gotten to pair with Matthew Stafford that would have cost you a lot in the future. So I think that's the beautiful thing for the Rams in this situation is they're able to chase a championship right now and be all in while not compromising future draft picks, future contracts. They're year to year with Stafford, and they're year to year with Davante Adams with a young and talented defense. So this is a great move. I think this ends up being the best skills position pickup in the offseason.
Yeah, no doubt. This is a needle mover for the Rams. You upgraded from Cooper Kupp, and you got. Listen, Davante's still a top 10 receiver, D-Mac. To me, it's not close. Despite him having what was considered a down year with the Raiders and the year he just had with the Jets, it's still better than 90% of wide receivers in the NFL, and it's not close. We watched the Rams really be a penalty away from potentially going to an NFC championship. This is a team that is still very much capable of putting themselves in Super Bowl contention. And I think we learned a lot about that football team last year because despite the start that most of us would assume they weren't going to the playoffs, they put themselves right in the thick of the NFC. Davante Adams with Matthew Stafford, it's a great combination. It takes a lot of pressure off Puka Nacua as well. It takes a lot of pressure off Kyron Williams. And for a Rams team that, to me, is going to have a top 3 defensive line in football next NFL season, the sky's the limit for this team. And a move like Davante Adams, I mean, there's no way they're not one of the 3 or 4 contenders in the NFC next season.
I just think he has 1 or 2 or possibly 3 more, like you said, top 10 receiving seasons. I mean, you look at those top receivers in the NFL. I mean, look, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb. I mean, those guys are still producing, but Davante Adams is not that far off, and none of those guys were attainable. I mean, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Devontae Adams is still in the conversation. Garrett Wilson, believe it or not, Garrett Wilson's never made a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro somehow, some way.
Ridiculous.
Which is kind of wild. But, he still has a lot of football left in his career. But this was a move that really signaled to the rest of the football world that, hey, this is a Rams team that was close to beating the Lions in 2024 in the wild card game. This is a Rams team that was 14 yards away from beating the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. Now you have a recommitted Matthew Stafford with Puka Nacua, who I think the cool thing is it's kind of like not even wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. It's really wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 1A.
Yeah.
You got those two guys. And then you brought back two, could be a little bit of stretch threat. I think the biggest thing they need to do to finish things off, go out there and draft a tight end. I would love to see them get Colston Loveland out of Michigan, kind of a hybrid-y type of tight end that can do some interesting things and bring that dynamic. But give credit to the Rams, man. I think and the word on the street was that Sean McVay was doing some crazy recruiting.
I believe it.
Late in the game, and that's what sealed the deal. And it kind of made me think, McVay, he's never going to coach in college, right? He's not a college coach. He's an NFL coach.
He's an NFL coach.
It's like when Mike Tomlin got mad when he was being mentioned with the USC. He's like, you don't ask Sean Payton this. Don't ask me this, right? Yeah. I don't know if Sean McVay was in Devontae Adams' parents' living room doing the Cupid shuffle like Saban was a couple years ago, but I think that for Devontae Adams to hear McVay tell him how much he wants him in this offense, that's got to give him a lot of confidence and give him credit for just not being this package deal with Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, my God. So me and Noel were literally saying this. We were in the office saying, I just pray that he does not feel like he has to follow Aaron Rodgers to wherever destination he goes, because I do not want to see that again. He is still a S-tier level receiver. You do not need to follow Rodgers to chase this ring. You can chase that ring in Los Angeles. And just to your point about the tight ends, if you're not able to get Tyler Warren, this is a really good tight end draft. If you get a Colston Loveland or a Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green, I still think they fit lovely into that Ram system.
Absolutely. I think that there's still moves to be made, and that's what you're going to see with all these teams that have shown that, hey, 2025, we think we can contend. Now, switching gears, we got to go to the association. LeBron James, Luka Doncic, and the Lakers, their 8-game winning streak was snapped over the weekend. They lose to the Boston Celtics and got out to a hot start, making tons of threes early on. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown scored over 40 points. And it was a game that it was clear you lose. You don't have Jackson Hayes. You don't have Rui Hachimura. You didn't have that front court depth of any kind. And the Celtics were just getting to the rim at will, making threes late. The Lakers still found a way to get back in this one, almost had a chance to win. But the big story afterward was that LeBron James left the game early due to a groin injury. Now, if you remember back in 2018, LeBron suffered that groin injury on Christmas Day. He said he heard a pop. Good news is he did not hear a pop, but here was LeBron James after the game talking about his groin injury.
Malika, sources tell ESPN. LeBron James is expected to miss at least 1 to 2 weeks with this strained groin. And typically with these soft tissue injuries, it leads to weeks long of absences, and it could be a potentially extended period of time here for LeBron James when he has evaluation here over the next 24 hours. But unlike in 2018, when LeBron James had that groin tear, I'm told he did not hear a pop last night in Boston. And unlike the last 2 years when the Lakers were competing for a play-in tournament slot, this time around, they are in the 3rd seed in the Western Conference. They do have a level of cushion, an ability here to have caution with LeBron James to be right for the stretch run and the playoffs. And as of right now, we do have to keep in mind, he needs to play 7 more games as well to be eligible for an All-NBA team.
So as Sham points out, hey, this is about getting him right for the playoffs. This is about avoiding anything that's going to hamper him, because this team is going to go as far as Luka Doncic and LeBron James are going to take them. And I think the positive in all this is the Lakers, like we've talked about recently, they're going through this hell's part of their schedule where you got back-to-back after back-to-back. You're going up against tough teams. You got the Bucks, you got the Nuggets that are on your schedule. We have 3 back-to-backs coming up. Bucks, Nuggets. And then he's played a lot of basketball. He's played a lot of minutes. He's focused on building that chemistry with Luka Doncic. And look, any kind of injury for LeBron James is going to be scary at the age of 40. And groins can tend to continue to reoccur, those injuries, and you just can't have that. So the thing is, you got 6 weeks of basketball left. If he does miss a couple of weeks, yes, that's going to hurt. You could see him drop to a 4 seed or a 5 seed. I like to see him play the Rockets or something like that early, but at the end of the day, you would rather have the Lakers as a 4 or a 5 seed with a healthy LeBron James than the Lakers with a 2 seed and a LeBron James that doesn't have a lot of tread on the tire, that's playing with the check engine light on, because they need him to empty the tank in the playoffs. And you hate to see this because he had been playing so well, really at an all NBA level since Luka Doncic was added to the team. But you saw the play that he injured it. LeBron said after the game that it occurred in the fourth quarter when he was driving to the hoop. Jaylen Brown was defending him. He was pivoting a couple different times, and then he threw in some pump fakes there, finished it off the glass with his left hand. And it was clear then that he felt something, but it wasn't just dramatic. I went back and I watched it a couple of different times, and I think for LeBron, he knows his body so well, and this could be a strategic move to be either overly cautious with this, and then on top of that, essentially load managing him down the stretch to make sure that he's going to be in a good spot when the playoffs come rolling around. But Noel, what did you make of the LeBron injury? Scale of 1 to 10. How concerned are you about this injury?
I'm not too concerned. I think it's a kind of a business decision on his end. I feel like the type of injury we're seeing, we've seen it in recent years from a couple other superstars. They typically come back 5, 7, 9 days. I do think he's going to push more towards that 2-week span to sit out, even though considering they're having a really tough schedule coming up. Like you said, you want him at 100% going into the postseason. This is one of the few years out of the past couple of seasons where it looks like the Lakers could have a legit shot to go deep, and you want LeBron at his best to go through all the playoff matchups that they're going to get. I'm looking at a couple other teams on the schedule, though, that have been heating up, and you know, the Lakers, if they drop some of these tough games to the Nuggets, to the Bucks, you got teams like the Warriors and the Timberwolves that are riding pretty good win streaks that are only a couple games behind the Lakers. So my big concern isn't really about LeBron's health. It's about where the Lakers are going to be on the standings after this. I think something to keep an eye on, and we're really going to need a really dominant Luka during these next couple games.
For sure. So what would you put at 1 to 10?
I would say probably a 4.
A 4?
In terms of his health. Yeah.
I'm a little higher on that. I got a 6 just because of the reoccurring. But how about you, J-Rob?
I'm actually not worried about it all. I probably put it to like a 3. I'm gonna be honest. I feel like as long as they're healthy, if everybody's ready for the playoffs, you get Jackson Hayes, Rui back. I'm kind of with Shannon Sharp. You know, USA, SGA, PGA, Lakers in 5.
Yeah, no, I love that for sure. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, they wouldn't be a true 5 seed or 4 seed just because this record wouldn't be a true indication about how talented this team is. But it was cool to see LeBron catch up with his former teammate Richard Jefferson before the game, and the lip readers caught what he was saying to him, and Richard did have some questions about the whole Stephen A. Smith thing, and here you could catch this little interaction. So here, right there. I mean, hey, don't mess with Papa James. Don't mess with LeBron James's son. He's not going to be happy, especially if you're Stephen A. Smith. So yeah, that was the big thing last weekend. I'm sure that that LeBron is going to be thinking about Stephen A. and in the back of his mind using that as just some extra fuel. Like I said, it was kind of the Heat Celtics game 7 look on LeBron's face when he was kind of looking at him. But switching gears, talk about Garrett Cole. So the Yankees, coming off that World Series loss, you had a pretty big offseason. You brought in Max Fried, and this rotation was supposed to be one of the best in Major League Baseball with Max Fried and Carlos Rodon and Luis Gil. They had pieces, but Luis Gil, he's going to miss some time. Max Fried's there. Marcus Stroman's going to step into that rotation. We know he didn't want to be a reliever, so he kind of gets what he wants. But the fear for Yankees fans right now is that Garrett Cole is going to have to potentially undergo Tommy John surgery. So doctors have recommended that Garrett Cole will have to undergo Tommy John, and manager Aaron Boone said today that would leave him out for the entire 2025 season, for a good part of the 2026 season. The typical recovery time for Tommy John is anywhere from 12 to 18 months, but Cole is meeting with Dr. Neil Elitroch for a second opinion. And Boone said, if he does have to get surgery, hopefully that's something that serves us well in the long haul. Instead, if he's compromised at all or going through a tough situation, the reality is Garrett still has a lot of pitching in front of him in his career. Now, he did pitch in spring training against the Twins last Thursday through 54 pitches, went 2 2/3 innings, gave up 6 runs. And despite just a rough outing, it didn't look like there was anything too serious, because the fastball velocity was averaging 95.7 miles per hour. He topped out at 97.6 miles per hour, so that was encouraging. And he also told reporters after his start that he was pleased with where the velocity was, and he said he felt okay. He was throwing 6 different pitches that were all grading out as above average pitches. So this is very, very unfortunate, because it comes after they learned that Luis Gil had a shoulder injury that was bothering him, and that he's going to be out for at least 3 months. So Luis Gil out for at least 3 months with a shoulder injury. Garrett Cole could potentially miss the entire season after undergoing Tommy John surgery. And now this Yankees rotation that would have been top 5-10 in the league is possibly going to be bottom 10. So yeah, rough news for the Pinstripes. He's still got talent. Fried, Rodon, some pieces, Stroman in the rotation. He's someone that certainly can provide a boost, but they're going to need their young guys to step up. Clark Schmidt, he found something last year. They need guys like that to step up. But the truth of the matter is they're going to be without an ace. The good thing is they signed an ace level pitcher in Max Fried, but it's a very different Yankees team without Garrett Cole. So you got to feel for the Pinstripes, and hopefully, just for the sake of all baseball fans and just the betterment of the game, he can find a way to get healthy and stay healthy. But truth is, this is Major League Baseball in 2025. I mean, essentially almost 50% of starting pitchers, especially ones that throw high velocity, are going to have the surgery at some point throughout their career. A couple years ago, Cole almost underwent surgery. And I think my biggest takeaway is the Yankees they're not the well-run organization that the Dodgers are. And I say that because at the end of last season, Garrett Cole was mentioning some elbow problems. And instead of addressing it then, where you could potentially have had that Tommy John surgery, you would have been 5 months ahead of the recovery time. But you kick the can down the road, you go to spring training, and now you probably going to miss the entire 2025 season and a good portion of 2026. So I think sometimes you have to just be honest with where your players are at. I mean, look at the Dodgers right now with Shohei Ohtani, right? I mean, they're ramping him up with the hitting program, and they're saying, look, we're going to take a step back from the throwing. So, yeah, you hate to see this. Cole last year had a 3.5 ERA, threw a little more than 90 innings, was 8-5, but he was dealing with something last year. So who knows what the Yankees do, man? Who knows what they do? Do they go out there, make a move at the deadline? I see some Yankees want to trade for Trevor Bauer, even though he's getting pounded in Japan. Trevor Bauer's not really a top 3 starter at the major league level at this point of his career. So rough for the Yankees. Now, sticking in the show, Dave Roberts. Dave Roberts, in what was expected, has become the highest paid manager in Major League Baseball, but only by a small margin. And it's great to see Dave get the bag. It's great to see Dave get compensated for the kind of manager that he is, which is the best in the sport, in my estimation. But I'm a little shocked by the overall numbers of this deal. His new deal averages $8.1 million, and that surpasses what Craig Counsell got from the Cubs when he signed a 5-year, $40 million deal. Alex Cora signed a $21.75 million deal, which had him under $8 million. I thought the Dodgers would put him at 9. I thought there was a chance they might put him at 10 considering what Dave has meant to this franchise as someone that has got to the playoffs every year, has gone to 4 World Series, has won 2 World Series titles, should have been 3, but he ends up signing for $32.4 million for over 4 years. Still a great amount. I mean, still awesome money for Dave Roberts. And the most important thing for him is to win a title as a Dodger again this season and a couple more times before he hangs them up. But Dave gets his bag. Best manager in the sport gets the most money, and that makes the most sense to me. So good thing for Dave, but come on, let's give my man Dave a little more money. Now, lastly here, there was a fighter that continues to say things about LeBron James. I think a lot of, I mean, from just looking this up, a lot of fans are really sick of this dude. What's his name? Colby Covington. Here's Colby Covington talking about LeBron James.
Good, bro. Listen, there's been a little bit of controversy with your boy LeBron James lately. I've seen him go off on Stephen A. Smith. What do you think about that?
What a scumbag, bro. Like, dude, it's America. Freedom of speech, LeBron. Do you not realize we have constitutional amendments for a reason? Oh, yeah, you don't care about that. You're bought and sold by the Chinese finger puppets. So you're a scumbag, LeBron. You don't care about this country that made you all that money. And I hope you get sick and worse. I don't even want to say any worse, but like you're a terrible human being. You put targets on the backs of our law enforcement, our first responders, who you use privately for your family to secure you. So you're just not a good person. You're despicable, and I despise you. LeBron James, you bitch ass motherfucker. Come see a real ass motherfucker, OG. You get your ass knocked the out without your private security.
Oh my goodness, this is a Wendy's Colby Covington. No one cares what you have to say. Who is this guy? Clearly, this guy's been hit in the head way too many times, and I think it was kind of crazy. He basically was about to say that he wishes that he died. I mean, he was about to say that. I mean, anyone pick that up? This guy's the biggest loser in sports. There's no way in hell that guy would ever say that to LeBron James's face. And one of my favorite things about LeBron, Skip Bayless, love or hate Skip Bayless, over the last 2 decades, Skip has been one of the most powerful, one of the most successful, one of the most influential members of the sports media, and LeBron James has never acknowledged his existence. Never once has LeBron James acknowledged that Skip Bayless is a living, breathing mammal, that he actually has a birth certificate and a social security. LeBron has never done that, despite Skip Bayless making hating LeBron his personality trait. And I think LeBron is going to use that formula for this Colby Covington guy, who clearly has had some success in MMA. Good for him for doing that. But the truth is, this guy is nowhere near the successful athlete that LeBron James is. I'm glad that LeBron never acknowledges this level of haters, these type of haters, these type of trolls on him. And look, it sounds to me that people are tuning out this troll, and it's good to see it. But tell me more about Colby Covington, J-Rob.
I mean, he's just a loser, to be honest. I hate to like sound so rough, but you know, he's an MMA fighter. He is somebody that even Dana White, who is very much freedom of speech, you know, allows a lot of his guys to be very opinionated, has had to come and speak on his behalf and pretty much say like, this idiot within my league is not, you know, a representation of all of us. I think, you know, we call it in today's social media rage bait. And I think he's kind of made he's essentially made his living off of that in the UFC, kind of trying to be like a heel, as you would say, one of our WWE references. But I mean, ultimately, if we're talking about Colby Covington, talking about LeBron James, I mean, like no disrespect, but Colby couldn't even like sniff LeBron's Nikes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like,
No, I mean, what do I have in common with Colby Covington? And that is LeBron James doesn't know we exist, right? I mean, actually, I know. In fairness, I did beat LeBron at the ESPYs one year. We were cool. My mom took a picture with us at somewhere. We're talking about Ohio State, by the way.
That's awesome.
So maybe he probably, he probably doesn't remember me, but he probably, there's a better chance that he does than Colby Covington. Because
sure.
Colby Covington, first of all, I just hate this trying to get the politics into it, trying to get like that kind of stuff into it. But I guess he kind of won because we're talking about him on our show, kind of rage baiting. But look, you guys know how I feel about LeBron, and the respect level is at a 10. But it's kind of one of those things where it has nothing to do with it's outside of the performance on the court, which is all-time great. Dude's dealt with the media in interesting ways. I mean, he does his own tweets. He says things out of emotion sometimes. Sometimes it feels like LeBron is a little extra, but it's him. It's who he is. So good for LeBron for not taking the bait for any of these guys. He did react to Stephen A, so that tells you that he's listening and he's watching, but he's not going to be.
I was going to just add, LeBron is on a run right now. He just got Stephen A and Skip Bayless to
He might get Kobe.
Yeah, put their powers back together. They reunited right after.
The common enemy. Yeah.
The enemy of Miami
is your friend. Yeah, for sure. So we actually got a late update. Garrett Cole is going to be undergoing Tommy John surgery. So yeah, everything we talked about, it's going to be rough for that Yankees rotation. The Yankees losing their ace before the start of the season. The Cy Young Award winner is set to have Tommy John surgery. Unfortunately, it's a dark part of our game in Major League Baseball, and you hate to see it, but a speedy recovery to Garrett Cole. But that is going to do it for this episode of The Big Lead. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And until next time, we out.